Hello.
Hi.
One movie. This is the charity data for Our Place Society in Victoria, BC. As you can see, business registration number, so on and so forth. This is a graph showing revenue generated versus expenditures, which I made another video breaking down how a charity or a nonprofit or a business or organization cuts costs, and also as they're able to write expenses or expenditures off as business expenses and get their money back. Also, there is not everything is being claimed through the CRA and through charity data. This is just a general idea of how much money is being generated. And I'll tell you right now, if you were to go into Our Place or into the Salvation Army or into Rock Bay Landing or Kool-Aid Society, it would be very clear that this graph is lying. Okay, so we know they're generating $15 million a year plus, but what they're lying about is they're trying to make themselves look as if their expenditures is equivalent to the amount of money that they generated. First of all, that's not how business works in general. If your expenditures were exactly the same amount as how much revenue you generated, the business wouldn't exist. Okay, that's simple math. Simple business. We know that businesses don't run like that. We know that there's profit margins and ROIs, return of investments. We know that there's write-offs of, you can write things off as business expenses to get your money back. We know that there's cutting costs when it comes to cutting out food expenses by going to all the grocery stores and all the businesses and collecting the food that they were going to throw out at the end of the day, and collecting all of that and serving that to the homeless, which would cut food costs out of the budget by millions. We know that they cut costs by minimizing the amount of employees that work at these places. I've been able to see that at one point in time there was 58 staff, and up like years ago, and then now there's 8 staff. Do you know how much money that the difference is in between 58 staff and 8 staff? When you cut 50 staff out, how much more money goes to the organization? Millions, hundreds of thousands. And they're doing this intentionally. They're cutting costs. They're finding ways to not have to disclose certain financial, they're not inputting all receipts. Some things can be considered not, they can be considered to be basically, you don't have to receipt them. There's certain things like gifts and donations that aren't counted as revenue. Certain things can be not counted as revenue. Therefore, there's millions of dollars that are not being displayed or reflected here. And not to mention, if you were to actually go into these places and you would think, and you're sitting here knowing that at least from what they're at least allowing us to see is that they've had 15 million in revenue in 2021. Well, if you were to make, listen, you could totally wipe out homelessness with $15 million. They are mismanaging, mishandling, and frauding the community and frauding this money. They're not receipting everything. They're using tax loopholes to escape, to generate wealth for themselves, to keep themselves employed, and to keep their lifestyles, luxurious. And there's more information. You can go to staff. You can see the top highest paid employees and stuff like that. $120,000 to $160,000 yearly salary for one person. I wonder who that is. What is that, Greg? Gary, Grant, whatever name he uses. Anyways, there's also, you can see names here for secretary, director, treasurer, director, chair. You can see names, first and last names, right? And they're not also disclosing a lot of information. A lot of information is not being accurately reflected on this sheet, trust me. A lot of things don't add up. And there's ways to get away with this legally, okay? But I'm going to show you now what the Pandora strip right here looks like, okay? 919 Pandora Avenue, Our Place Society. You're going to see a video of somebody walking up this street where all of the homeless people are outside of this establishment that generates well over $15 million a year and is committing fraud in multiple ways. Tax fraud, government fraud, charity fraud, community fraud, and none of the resources, that less than the bare minimum, are going to the actual homeless guy or the homeless people. The food is slop at this place. It's literally just it's stuff that got thrown out, that, you know, stuff that's going to make you sick, you know, to keep you homeless, you know, because if you're sick, you can't work, you know, and they need you to stay here, because if you go away, Mr. Homeless Guy, this $15 million plus is gone. It's gone. If they solve homelessness, there's no need for this $15 million anymore. What are you going to do with it? Put it back in your pocket? Well, now everyone is going to know that you're stealing it, you know, because they're going to look and see no homeless people and be like, well, what do you need the $15 million for then? Oh, I still need my $200,000 salary, and I still got to pay. I still want to, you know, buy 4 more houses. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these people are criminal. They're criminal, and they're all friends. The CEOs and the spokespersons for Our Place Society are friends with the same guys at the Salvation ARC, friends with the same guy that ran Kool-Aid Society forever, like that retired, Alan. And they're all friends on Facebook, liking each other's posts and stuff, and their trips to Paris and their multiple vacations that they're bragging about on their Facebook posts and their Facebook statuses. These people are criminals. They're fraudulent criminals with a fake smile. The Salvation Army generated, I thought, you know, back when I was counting the beds, I didn't count all the beds, but I made, from counting the beds that I could, I came out with a figure of like $30,000 a month. Well, they have 147 beds, and they charge $600 a month for you, a homeless guy, to live in a dorm with, you know, 30 plus other men in bunk beds. And I didn't know they had 147 beds now. I counted that up. That came to around, you know, 88, 90, about $90,000 per month. But I just watched a guy buzz the Salvation Army downstairs and ask for a bagged lunch at lunchtime, and they turned him down, and he walked away empty-handed. If you're generating this much money, and that's just off the beds of the homeless people, you can't even give them a bagged lunch, well, you have no excuse. You guys are committing fraud. There's only one answer. You know, there's a lot of money not being accounted for. There's a lot of people overpaying themselves in salaries, and homelessness is getting worse. And they're lying to the community, you know, about all the things and resources and everything else. There's no resources. They're lying. They're lying. Unless you were homeless and went out there to try to use these resources, you would never know that there is none. There's nothing. There's no help. The shelters are always full. You got to sleep outside all the time. They won't even give you a blanket in the winter time. I've asked them multiple times. They won't give you no food. You know, they'll make you wait the 3 times a day for some really petty small amount of slop that literally just makes you sick. And they're playing a really, you know, a disgusting game. Let's just put it that way. And they're not telling the truth. Okay? They're lying. The money that they're generating does not reflect inside of these places in any way, shape, or form. If this amount of money was used correctly and used to actually help the homeless, then there would be no homelessness. But they don't want that, because if they solve the problem, there's no need for a solution, which means there's no need for this revenue. Use your head. then that means what about this guy's salary? You know, what about this guy making $160,000 a year, which is more than that he's making? Trust me. Well, then he does. that's over now for him. Well, now what is he gonna do? Well, he's gonna say, no, I'm not gonna let that happen. We're just gonna keep doing what we're doing. You know, keeping it at a bare minimum, so that way homelessness cannot evolve out of its current state, and we can continue to say, see, we've made a very small amount of progression, but we're gonna need another $100 million next year. You know, and they just keep going and going and going and going. And they're lying about their costs. They're lying about their expenditures. This may be how much it should have costed in expenditure, but cutting costs. They don't tell you, they don't add that in. Is there a little note stating, hey, we were able to cut costs by, $5 million this year to maximize our return of investment or profit margins? No, they're not saying it at all. They're not telling you at all, but they are doing that. That's what businesses do. That's the idea, is to cut costs as much as possible to maximize profits. Why would any business not do that? But as for problem is, if they were to contribute revenue correctly and use it to really create change and effect in the homelessness community, then there would be no homelessness. You know what I'm saying? So they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing with the money, and they're doing that on purpose. Now take a look at this.